to me, it comes down to respect. If we don't treat our house well, if we don't treat our environment well, then our own health is going to suffer. So I think it's too easy to forget when we live somewhat in isolation of the environment, and we don't stop to think that we depend on clean water, on healthy grasslands, on clean air for our life.
Welcome to the Mongabay newscast. I'm your co-host, Mike DiGirolamo, bringing you weekly conversations with experts, authors, scientists, and activists working on the front lines of conservation, shining a light on some of the most pressing issues facing our planet and holding people in power to account. This podcast is edited on Gadigal land. Today on the newscast, we speak with Jean-Gaël Collomb, who also goes by Jean-Gaël. He is the CEO of the Wildlife Conservation Network, a nonprofit in the San Francisco Bay Area of California that helps grassroots and local conservation organizations around the world secure funding. Put another way, it could be described as a bit of a venture capital firm for conservation. We wanted to speak with Collomb about his organization's work and, crucially, why community-based conservation is critical to addressing biodiversity loss and climate change, thoughts that he recently penned in a joint op-ed with Peter LaLumpa. Collomb weighs in on initiatives like 30 by 30, protecting 30% of the Earth's lands and water by 2030. And he agrees that indigenous sovereignty is a must for this initiative, but he adds it is vital for indigenous perspectives to be centered in every global conversation on how to protect the environment. Local communities are at the front line and have firsthand knowledge of the best way to implement conservation measures, he argues. We talk about conservation philanthropy, specifically the ethics and transparency of philanthropic funding, and why unrestricted funding, that is, funding that communities decide how to use, is a critical component to getting it right. I really enjoyed speaking with Collomb, and I found his clarity on community and wildlife needs to be refreshing, just, and practical. Jean-Gaël, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Mongabay newscast. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having us. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you, Mike.
And we're going to talk a lot about the work that you do today. But the first thing I want to tackle with you is there's a statement in a recent op-ed that you wrote for us, and it says, if we are serious about tackling climate change and preserving biodiversity, we must embrace holistic and inclusive approaches to conservation that integrate both wildlife and community needs. Now, we can talk about the how of that in a little bit, but the first thing I want to talk about is the why behind that statement. So why are both wildlife and community needs crucial to tackling biodiversity and climate crises?
Well, I think if you want to fight climate change or climate crisis, I think you have to really invest in and work with the gardeners of that planet, the people who are on that front line and the other creatures that are on that front line. So those are the animals. I think our world is really interconnected. And so we can't address the climate crisis if we don't engage with the people who are directly involved in the impacts of climate change, who have the ability to do something, even if it's at a small scale, because all those small scales add up. And all of those other creatures that are affected and affect our climate, elephants, zebras, pangolins, anything that really uses our natural resources, I think have to be part of a solution.
Mm. And there's kind of like this chain reaction that you talk about also in that op-ed that can occur when intensifying climate challenges affect ecosystems. And it's a very stark, almost domino effect that occurs, like when grasslands in Kenya are impacted by droughts. Can you describe that process for us?
Well, yeah, I mean, when Right. Grasslands are impacted by droughts. Everything ultimately ends up being impacted. The grass quality degrades over time. So a number of different things happen. The grass is no longer available for the cattle or other livestock that depend on it. And so the livelihood of the people who depend on that livestock is affected. They go and take their cattle, livestock in other places where there's higher quality grass. In some instances, that might be in areas that are otherwise protected for wildlife. And so then there's a potential conflict with livestock animal being inside protected areas, which they're not supposed to be, but out of survival, they go there. Those animals can be predated by the wildlife. And so that causes conflict between the wildlife and the people, because livestock often is like it's like a bank account for many pastoralist communities. And so when a lion eats a cow or a goat, it has a real impact, obviously not just on the animal being eaten, but also on the communities who depend on those animals. And likewise, as the grass gets degraded over time, it's also harder for other wild animals who depend on that high quality grass to survive. So the whole ecosystem slowly gets under more and more pressure. You can imagine a number of other things that happen as it gets drier and drier. It's more prone to fire, and so that can have other devastating effects. And so it's a real vicious cycle that both communities and their livestock and the wildlife and the supporting environment gets put through, and it intensifies all those pressures.
Hey, and thanks for tuning in to listen to the first few minutes of this interview. There's a lot more to it. So if you want to hear the full conversation, find the Mongabay newscast wherever you get your podcasts from and click subscribe. You can also get each new episode straight to your inbox by subscribing to Mongabay's weekly newsletter at mongabay.com. If you really want to help support us, you can also donate to us at patreon.com/Mongabay. Don't forget to leave a review, and thank you as always for listening.